All right, everyone. Today I'm joined by Matteo or Matzo. He was on the channel a while ago. We were speaking about his kind of recovery from long COVID and what had worked for him with the mind body healing and all of that. Uh, so Matzo's got his own channel now where he shares some stuff now and then. What we were thinking for today was just to talk about how the journey continues, working with nervous system regulation in life when you're not kind of pulled back from life, living in this little bubble anymore. I think both Matt and I have had different insights about navigating this stage of recovery. So you could call it kind of the later stages of healing or the deeper stages of healing. Uh, so yeah, Matt's here to join me, and we'll see where this goes. Thanks for popping on, Matt.
Yeah, hello. Thanks
Yeah.
for inviting me.
Yeah, you're always welcome on the channel. So maybe just start by, I don't know, like how's life for you nowadays? If we could
Yeah,
start there.
yeah, yeah. I hadn't posted a video in quite a long while.
Yeah.
Um, there was I also explained in like the video after that yeah, I was doing really good last summer with recovery and everything, and I was feeling good, and then I started picking up things, more and more things of like normal life again,
Mm,
and eventually I just got more symptoms again, and yeah, that just was a like invitation for me to go another day, layer deeper. Like,
right.
yeah, I've had these like I think you could say like micro and macro waves within recovery. You know, you have your bad days, you have your bad moments in the days, and you have yeah, like the bigger trends kind of, which I've had
Mm,
quite
mm,
a few, even before. Even before last summer, there were like times where when things went really good, and I think you can relate as well.
yeah.
Um, and I think it's just part of the process. Every time when that happens, it's just it gets the first reaction from my side is just so much resistance because it usually happens when you're like you feel like you're on top again, and you feel like you get
Mm,
certainty in like, oh, this is I'm getting my life back now. This is how I'm gonna do it, and you know, maybe you start doing a bit too much. Maybe you start listening a bit less to your body,
mm,
and then it happens, and you know, things get shattered again in your mind. But after that resistance passes, it's always been like, oh, this is, of course, this happened. And
right.
of course, this is good for me in the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And
The clarity comes back.
yeah, and you see like where you were going wrong, and what you need to let go of. And
Mm,
so, yeah, there have been painful times, surely, but also very fruitful. Um,
mm,
and lately, yeah, so I've been focusing more actually on like um, emotional work and
mm,
like deeper layers of that. I think still last summer was quite cognitively the whole recovery. It's like even like the allowing and accepting was like from up in the head,
yeah.
and um, yeah, that kind of got forced more into like the body and deeper allowance and letting
Mm,
go. And also just looking at more hurt parts, so to say,
mm,
if you talk in like IFS terms or something. It's just
mm.
I've been doing therapy as well, um, schema therapy to be accurate, which is
What
more of an experiential
what would be schema
therapy.
therapy? Like a
Yeah, it's
brief
also with
description?
parts. It's also
Okay.
with parts. So like it's similar to IFS. So you kind of recognize parts of child parts and adult parts usually. That's the main ones.
Mm,
Um, and there's like a dynamic going on between like a hurt child or an angry child and a parent that's very tough and a parent that's undisciplined or whatever. And then you can kind of feel into those parts of yourself. And I think that part or that work can really help to break through some layers.
Mm,
Uh, I felt like for me, a long time I was sitting with sensations, with emotions, and I was kind of um, yeah, just trying to view them as neutral.
right.
And that's good work, I think. But when you feel into them as like when you give them a voice, for example, and you can
Mm,
identify that that pain has been there for a longer time, and I recognize it from that and that event or something. And then you kind of feel into that and hold it as like a healthy adult or the person you wanted to be there at the time that it happened.
mm,
Um, you can do that, you know.
yeah,
That's the
yeah.
thing it's asking for, and you don't need anyone else. You don't need a therapist even.
Mm,
It's helpful, but you are the healthy adult at this moment who can provide that child or whatever with what it needed back then and still back now and
yeah,
right now.
yeah,
And putting that story to it really helped me sometimes to kind of break through that and make a connection with that sensation part, and
yeah.
that has been really helpful for me.
Yeah, I love that. It's like more than just kind of the bare acceptance of it, or like you said, this kind of neutral, just being with it. I think actually I had somebody on one of my month-long course that I did not so long ago who shared like what a shift that was for him as well. He was talking about imagining an ideal parent to meet whatever sensation or resistance pattern or blockage was arising in his experience, call it the symptoms to keep it simple. Uh, and I think it's quite similar to what you're talking about. And what's key, like I'd say the key points there for people is that you, like you said, you can do it for yourself. So uh, that's what's beautiful. Like it doesn't matter how many wounds you have or like how many um of these experiences you had in childhood where like kind of a part of you wasn't met as it was meant to be. That's the nice thing about doing this work now, is that you can meet those aspects of yourself, from like a
Mm,
more whole place. But what was key, just thinking back to what this guy shared on the course about the ideal parenting, was not trying to meet you are doing it yourself, but not trying to meet it from yourself in a sense, so like kind of seeing this wound or this kind of part, this hurt part that needs some parenting, imagining in your experience the most ideal parent in that moment, just completely giving it what it needs. And it's a cool shift in perspective because it's like it's not you trying to accept yourself. That kind of shift in perspective can be quite
mm.
powerful for uh, making that part of it feel like it's getting exactly what it wanted at that time. It's like what would be, and you don't need the perfect parents. You can just imagine like what would be the most ideal parent um, that would tell it exactly what it needs. And yeah, he kind of shared that. I thought that was quite a good
Yeah.
way of doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, when you look at it like that as well, it's like it naturally brings so much compassion, like
Yeah, exactly.
because it's usually like this part that we've felt really like distant toward, we want to have it removed. And once
Mm,
you kind of see it as just it's just your inner child asking
yeah.
for love and attention. And
I
how
think,
how could you be like this
yeah,
like a tyrant to this kid when you
exactly.
connect with him? I also like part of it is just like my background of my phone is like a
Little,
picture of myself now
little
to
Matt.
yeah to that's part of the therapy or to kind of
Right.
reconnect with him and to see
Mm,
like what are you doing on a day-to-day basis? What are you signaling to him? Like
mm,
how much of a fucking tyrant are you
mm,
to this
mm,
kid, you know?
mm.
Because that's yeah, usually how we probably people who are dealing with this are have been coping with it, like with those needs of the child. We've been slamming them down and just being like
Yeah.
yeah, not a good parent towards it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's understandable. Like we learn, it's all conditioning
Yeah.
in essence of like what we picked up from other people's parenting styles and just social conditioning on how to kind of what to do about these different parts of ourselves.
Yeah.
But I think what's so key that you mentioned there is understanding, seeing it from the perspective of the wound itself, or seeing it from the perspective of whatever it is, right? Like when we're talking about this, people can be using all different techniques. Like you're working with it from like a psychology perspective, it can be the same process, just in different terminology for different people. So I always
Yeah.
want to say that don't get caught up too much in the terminology if you're listening to this. But to understand the innocence of all of our coping mechanisms and patterns and
Mm.
wounds and everything, like it served its purpose at the time. Like it
Yeah.
was exactly, and often, even I was speaking with a lady recently who said something so profound, which I love, was like everything served its purpose to help that child to cope. So even like these limiting beliefs that we develop, like I'm not enough, I am I am unworthy, I'm unloved, I am whatever, like these things that feel like these are kind of our core limiting beliefs that need to be worked through. It was exactly how that child had to make sense of the world in that
Mm.
in that time, like it was the only like belief that could make things make sense. Like, why can I not receive exactly the amounts of love that I need right now from my parent or from this or from that? And then the only thing that can make sense from for the child from that perspective is, well, I am not worthy of it. I am not enough because, oh, this is what she said, which was so fucking good. Because they are your core nurturers and caregivers. So you can't really
Mm.
start forming beliefs around them being bad or wrong because you're literally reliant on them to provide for you and look after you.
Mm.
So the child can't make the belief that you
They're
know
struggling with something, or
yeah,
they're
exactly,
busy, or
or exactly,
yeah.
or it's like, oh, this is their kind of inability to meet me as I need to. Like from the child's perspective, they are the ones that have all the shit together and all of that,
Yeah.
so it must be me. So that's why
Yeah.
we take that all on. And that was such a, to go back to that point of understanding where it comes from, that was such a helpful way to frame it, to see that it
Mm.
was like the child had no other way, right? Like it was exactly um yeah, and just understanding how the mechanism works. It's just like,
Yeah.
okay, so we internalize it all, okay, if the parent can't meet me here, it must mean I'm not worthy of love, I'm not deserving of love. um and even like self-hatred, this was another really good one, was when we want to kind of change something in the world, like when you're really small and you see things that just don't feel right to the self, but you're too small to do anything about it, right? You like, or even you can't change what your caregivers or your parents are doing to you. That that hatred or that kind of anger at not being able to change things gets turned back inward as well,
Mm.
because it's like this this is not enough. This body is not enough. Like I can't do what I want to do. Like I'm not able to take action in the world or whatever. So
Mm.
even self-hatred, you can start to understand from an innocent perspective as well, that it was just like this inner frustration that kind of gets directed back inwards. Um, and I feel like that seeing everything from that perspective makes it so much easier to have compassion for it. Like,
Mm.
it's completely innocent, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and ultimately compassion and self-love is the only thing that's gonna melt this away, these structures.
exactly.
Like we tried it for so long to do it with another layer of hate or
Yeah.
judgment. But yeah, it sounds corny, but love is, and then specifically self-love, like
Mm,
um, yeah, the love you have for yourself and for your parts and stuff. Because otherwise we can get caught up in like seeking that love from
yeah.
elsewhere, in relationships or substances or whatever. That's
Mm,
that feeling of love. You can give that yourself if you have more understanding. It's easier if you see it like this. It's just a child, and it wasn't, on
mm,
purpose that he did all of this. And
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes what we may need to do is really feel the entirety of the wound as well, to kind of
Mm.
get to the love underneath it, because sometimes there is this, I'm just trying to think for somebody listening to this who might have like a lot of trauma, and it just, they have this kind of system in them that's, no, I'm not allowed the love, because
Mm.
what would stop someone from having that self-love? It would be not being willing to feel through the wounds, right? Part of this is the kind of shadow work and working through the unconscious material and all of that is knowing that none of the darkness or none of the non-self love stuff, you're not going to get caught up in that either. The self love naturally flows through allowing yourself to fully experience that, because I think that's what can be confusing for people is you think of self-love, so then when you have the experience of self-hatred or kind of completely I'm not good enough, there's really dark wounds that everyone's going to get to if you keep on this path for long enough. It
Mm.
feels like something's gone wrong when you go into those spaces,
Yeah.
when it's like,
Yeah.
oh, and that's the belief that catches people, right? Is like, oh, if I go completely into this, I'm going to turn into this like depressed person. I'm going to turn into this like
Yeah.
kind of, you know, it's just the mind is terrified of going into those spaces. But that's in essence for me, like when I think of what is the core of love or self-love or compassion, it's allowance. Like that's a
Mm.
word that I keep coming back to nowadays, is the complete allowing of everything to be exactly as it is. That's what love is, right? It's like
Mm.
saying you're allowed to be here exactly as you are. Like, I don't need
Mm.
to fix you. I don't need to change you. I don't need to heal you. I don't need to release you. I don't need to shift you. All these traps that we can fall into. Um,
Mm.
so that's often an aspect of the self love that people can um, get caught in, is that part of it might be feeling total self hatred towards yourself. Like
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
that's
that's
the
we talked about this the other day, I think, when we were talking about like manifesting
yes,
and people try to manifest things and just it feels like there's layers and you're just trying to add some layers of love on top of it and then
yeah,
you will manifest all the love and abundance and happiness and everything. But sometimes the what needs to be manifested is the darkness or
exactly.
the shadow for you to feel it because it just wants to get felt. Everything that's in
Mm-hmm.
the unconscious just keeps repeating itself until you process it. Like if you
Mm,
have a problem with rejection or with attachment or whatever, you'll just see the world through the lens where you'll get into contact with these situations over and over again. You see
yeah.
this with people getting into the same relationships and same habit patterns. It's from my perspective now, it's like it's just the unconscious wanting to get you into contact with that feeling that you've been
Mm,
avoiding and for you to process it and then underneath you will come to a kind of peace, self-love, and that's naturally manifesting itself then you go into the world with gratitude and peace and everything. But
yeah.
as you say, sometimes there's the what's keeping you from feeling that self-love is just feeling
Mm,
or allowing the self-hatred that's there.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah. Don't
it's
skip that phase. Like,
yeah, and you can't though. That's because you said it so perfectly. There is if you kind of bullshitting yourself with this, it's these coping mechanisms, right? You can have
yeah,
coping mechanisms like distraction, like porn and food and sex and whatever, like all of that, or you can have spiritual coping mechanisms, which is like
yeah,
manifesting and attraction and all of that.
yeah,
And it's cool. I mean, play around with that if you want to, but the key is you can't, like you said, you're always unconsciously manifesting what is in your system, right? So
yeah,
even if it's like I see this picture of that iceberg meme that's kind of always there,
yeah,
where it's like on the top you're like doing all of this kind of spiritual self-help manifestation shit, and
yeah,
it's like that does nothing if you have this like massive
yeah,
iceberg of self-hatred underneath,
yeah,
or whatever it is, rejection, abandonment. Like abandonment was a big wound that came up for me recently. You were kind of telling me earlier how rejection was something that you attracted into your life recently. So it's
yeah,
like, don't worry about manifesting too much. And this is what I always like showing with people, is to keep it simple, is meet what your experience is bringing to you,
mm,
because
yeah,
that is your abundance, or whatever, to use that spiritual terminology. Like that is your pathway to healing or abundance or freedom or whatever. It's not in the unicorns and fluffy clouds. It's in
yeah,
exactly, you're always effortlessly manifesting what you need. So don't, like, we have to work through those beliefs, and that's why it always comes back to resistance, right? Because we have to work through that belief that's saying, no, this shouldn't be what's happening. It should be, you know flowing smoothly right now. This relationship should be working out. I shouldn't be feeling abandoned right now. I should be feeling self-love instead of
Yeah.
self-hatred. If you can, and that's why it always comes back to resistance, because if you stop resisting exactly what is coming into your reality, then exactly what you need is always coming into your reality.
Yeah.
It's always going to bring up the resistance that's already there. It's
Yeah.
always like that's. I made that video the other day, and you commented on it as well, saying like, yeah, it can often be overwhelming how much resistance is there, because you can grok this intellectually, and then then you're gonna have to see, like, and this has been for me as well. The journey is like, oh wow, there was so much more resistance than I realized there was.
Mm.
So yeah,
Yeah, yeah. What I mentioned there on the comment as well is like what you said before as well. It's like when you go deeper and deeper into this path, it can feel sometimes. I get caught in it. It's like,
yeah,
you know, I'm not doing something right or something. I'm just
yeah,
seeing more and more of like then if I get caught in it, it's like, but I'm so fucked up. I'm my mind is just so fucked up. I'm
mm,
not doing well. And then it takes usually very quickly, and I'll see like, oh, that's just the part of me that has been always there.
mm,
That kind of the one is that is seeking this or seeking that or avoiding this or avoiding that. And now it feels free enough to come up. It's a good sign.
yeah,
And otherwise, it would have directed my life unconsciously. It did in the
exactly,
past. I can see it now, but
yeah,
the fact that it is in your face can feel so much like you're taking so many steps back because it's like
mm,
I just feel worthless. And usually you could have plastered that up with like saying like, oh, I would have always said like, I'm gonna get so rich and get the
yeah.
Ferrari
It's
or
it's
something
it's
else.
all this future shit, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's
yeah,
it's, it's those coping mechanisms of like,
yeah.
yeah, so I want to get to plaster it up. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna imagine a future to cope with this, and you can't do
Yeah.
that anymore.
No, and then that feels really shit
It
because you
feels
feel
worse, yeah.
worthless or whatever it is, what it is for you. And but just remind yourself that that's a good sign if
Yeah,
you become conscious of it. And that's been like the videos of Sam Miller on the Mindful Gardener. I've posted
yeah,
it as well on my YouTube channel. They're so good and have been so helpful for me. So I
mm,
can recommend it to anyone who's listening. And her main thing is she talks about allowing as well.
right,
And but she's so uh, she has a strong vocabulary and
mm,
she just pieces everything so well together. Um, and yeah, that's been really helpful for me to kind of allow those parts and just to watch it neutrally and
yeah,
allow it, just let it play out. I'm
mm,
I'm not that part. I'm the big self kind of,
mm,
if you want to put it in terms, watching it
mm,
and giving it the space to be and to complete its energetic charge as it wanted to do in the past but wasn't able because it got too overwhelming or it got pushed down by society or others, and now
yeah.
it's allowed to like to you just let it be. Just
Yeah.
just
What I love what you said there was right at the beginning was it comes up because it now feels like it can, which
mm,
is which is key because it's like you said, it feels like things have gone wrong. You can't look at this, you can't ever look at this journey like through linearity, or that it's like this linear path, because the forwards will often feel like the backwards, or you'll even return to the same wounds and it will feel more intense than it ever did before because now you're feeling it more directly. So for the mind that's trying to like keep track of things in time and be like, oh, okay, like now I'm here, oh, now I'm dealing with the same shit again. It's like that's always what's going to make things feel so tricky, is this mind that's kind of labeling and keeping track and all of that. But if you understand it in the way that you were explaining, is that as your capacity, and this is what I always love to share with people, is like as your capacity increases, more is going to come into your consciousness, like
mm,
more from that space is going to come in, and it's going to be more direct than previously because now you have the space to meet a deeper layer of it. And that's when we can feel like, not this again, and now it's worse than ever. So if you're looking at things in that kind of linear perspective, it feels like you're going backwards. But
mm,
the way that you explain it, and I completely agree, is it's you've got space for it now. It feels safer to come up. And one other thing I wanted to say, which can be helpful, like what you were talking about when you get caught up in it, and we all do. Like I've had these phases as well, where you can know all of this, but you can still get caught up in what's
Yeah.
arising, and it can be overwhelming, right? You can just feel like I do not have the capacity for this right now. Like this is what I experienced at the end of my travels. Was almost there was so much like that had been triggered by the end of the traveling. Um, so what I want to say is when it does get overwhelming, then use tools. Like it's all good and well to always understand that exactly what you need is always arising, but use tools to help support you to kind of give you a little bit more space when things do feel contracted. So like for me, it was a really humbling experience to see like how overwhelmed I could still get at the end of my traveling, just because it had been like it really pushed the nervous system to the limits, where I'd been like barely any sleep, like intense travels, intensely overstimulating, overwhelming places, people, blah blah blah. And I came back and I was like, ah, oh, wow, the nervous system really just needs some like recuperation, rest, more focus on restorative practices. And that's when I was spending a lot of time in nature recently. And it was like, that was such a key for giving just that little bit extra space and grounding to kind of help process like in this like, wow, there was a lot coming up. It was like really deep. So I think that understanding of the nervous system is helpful as well. Like,
Mm.
yes, even when things feel overwhelming, it's good. You haven't gone backwards, but still use whatever tools. This has always been helpful for me. It's just to reflect back on what was I doing in the past, especially when you start to go more into life. You know, like we talk about, okay, you get busier, you go more into life. Like, what was I doing in the past to help restore the nervous system? And then it's like,
Mm.
remember that when things get overstimulating. You know, maybe it's working with a therapist. Even for me, I was just kind of using Table Mountain as my therapist, but
Yeah.
because it's that strong feminine presence as well. Like nature really has that
Yeah.
holding. But whatever it is, yeah, I would just add that in because sometimes it can be a lot for our nervous system, our little nervous systems in the moment. So it's okay
Yeah.
to seek help in whatever way that is. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine if I would. I'm not gonna bring up any excuses, but the nature in South Africa would be
Yeah,
wonderful
but
to immerse myself in. Here, I'll go to a park here or something. It's
like
also
that,
nice, but it's a different energy.
it's a different energy. But it's funny. I was on my phone yesterday, and like Google Photos comes up with like, oh, this is like 8 months ago or whatever, and it came up with my time in Amsterdam, and I was
Yeah.
just like scrolling through that like that foresty area where we went with the goats, and
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this gorgeous nature around
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
well. So
See, I'm just trying to come up with excuses.
because honestly, like everything has a slightly different energy of what the nature is. Like here, it's a lot of like ocean and mountain energy, whereas for me, Amsterdam is very like green. Like we don't have that kind
Mm.
of greenness in the city here. So I mean, it's lovely to go to different spaces and get the energy there. But I literally thought of it when because we had spoken about it, like what's your like options for nature, and then literally these
Yeah.
pictures came up on my phone. Even just that park that's close to your house.
Yeah.
Um, I was like, yeah, it's a bit busy and all that, but there you guys have really nice green spaces. So
Yeah. Yeah. The streets and stuff. There's a lot of trees
yeah,
and parks, and it's you can find it everywhere, I think.
that's the key. Is
Even just
like
like
yeah,
what I really like is just laying down, looking at the sky. You can do that
yeah,
everywhere.
yeah,
That's
exactly.
even in an industrial site or whatever.
Yeah,
Just look at the sky and
exactly.
just look at the clouds, let them pass, just like you're watching your thoughts.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, like for me, that's always, and I always make this point in my video, but like look for, because there will always be something in somebody's reality that can be
Hmm.
like an opportunity, right? And again, the mind wants to resist and it wants to go into excuses and all of that, kind of like you were making the point
Mm.
towards yourself there. But it's good. It's good to point that out because I used to do that, right? Like I would listen to recovery stories of like someone like Raylan Eagles was like, oh, she went to Thailand or somewhere. She went somewhere and spent a lot of time there. It's like, oh, I can't do that. Like I can't go
Hmm.
do in those spaces.
Hmm.
But then eventually I found exactly what was right for me based on kind of like what was my upbringing and what was this. like this system looking for, and it was like, I spent so much time in the ocean as a kid, so like
Mm.
bringing that back into my life was so key. But there was not necessarily specifically people saying like, oh, you should go back into the ocean. It was like a reflecting on, okay, other people found what worked for them, and then I needed to find like what's my tools,
Yeah.
and yeah. So for anybody else, just kind of touch into that a little bit. Like it can be completely different. Like you could be really good at art, or um, I don't know, music. Like Matt can play the piano, I can't play the piano.
Yeah, that ties also really in together with like the part work uh, we
Oh
talked
yeah.
about. It's like you can just ask your inner child, like,
Mm,
what would you like to do if there were
mm,
no restrictions of parents, or what if you if you get more in contact with him or
mm.
her, um, it's like, yeah, little Kyle just wants to go to the ocean,
Yeah.
and then you find what your own
Mm,
nervous system likes,
yeah.
or paint or whatever. Just think back to what were the things that you really liked, or things that you liked but kind of had to repress because maybe,
Yeah.
I don't know, and then just attune to that.
Yeah. And I think what comes through there that's really helpful as well. Is that more of that playful side of life? Because I think
Mm.
that's what gets so lost in the healing journey. And it's funny, I notice it in myself as well, how I get pulled into seriousness sometimes, like even when I'm like thinking of like what should I don't know, like whenever things come up a lot, then it's like there's this easy to slip into the seriousness mode
Mm.
where it's like, okay, like I need to make a video every single day. I need to stop planning my next course. I need to go back and finish my degree. I need to do this. I need to do that. And suddenly life is just so fucking serious. And it's it's just like,
Mm.
and it's the same with healing, right? It's like, okay, I need to do that. Okay, now I need to work with my inner child. Okay, now I need to do this. Now I need to do that. Like it's so
Yeah,
easy to slip into that seriousness trap.
yeah,
But the key, like what you said, like speaking to your inner child, or finding what's your thing is what's, because that's what the key with a child, right? Is it's more of that playful energy. So it's like what wants to come through, but it doesn't have to be in such a serious way. It
yeah,
doesn't have to be for my healing, or doesn't have to be,
yeah, yeah,
so that I can get it right. Like that's, the mind can get so caught up in that
yeah.
mode of thinking. So if something obvious doesn't come up, that's okay. But it's just like, there generally will be something. It's like, I said this in my previous video. If you were completely healed and healthy and there was no limitations or anything at all, like what would you go and do?
Mm.
And it can be helpful to just sit with that for a bit. Maybe something doesn't come up immediately, but just write it out. See what would you do if you had all the resources, all the health, all of
Mm.
that, and that can get you in touch more with this kind of playful excitement energy. Like for me, I remember and it was cool. I've done all kind of all those things actually since then. But when I was like really in the long COVID healing phase, I wrote it out. I was like, I want to go hiking. I want to go camping. I want to start a channel where I talk about these things. I want to, I don't know, like meet people, like all these things. That was more from like this excitement energy, and
Mm.
then it can also be fuel for kind of when you're not feeling, when you're feeling like really, I don't know, overwhelmed, or
Mm.
I don't know. It can be like a motivation as well
Yeah,
for the healing. Yeah.
yeah. And that's almost like manifesting in my eyes.
Well, that's
Like,
the thing is it was because it
yeah,
all
you
did
you just
happen.
said like you did all those things that you thought about. Yeah,
Exactly.
it's when you like, also with manifesting, like, to me it's not really, I mean, you have people who say like, yeah, you can manifest like a parking spot or something,
Yeah.
or a lottery winner. That's, I don't think about that. It's like
Yeah.
when you have an idea about something you want to do, for example, and you attach a strong bodily reaction to that, like excitement,
Mm.
then that gets kind of, it just gets added to the unconscious. It's like it's
Yeah.
got
Yeah.
like a little imprint, and then you'll see the world from that space maybe. And
Mm.
or maybe next time you will think like out of nowhere, like, oh, maybe I can do that, because
Mm.
you kind of already made like a screenshot of that,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
But
that feeling and thought.
what's key there is you mentioned is the energy of excitement. Like that's
Mhm.
from like if I think of the like I don't really look at Joe Dispenza's stuff much anymore, but there was a phase when I was just interested in how he spoke about all of this, and and I mean he's big in that space, the whole like healing through
Mhm.
manifestation and all of that, and that was always what it came back to was excitement, where it was like,
Yeah.
um, or this is what people
The
talk about,
feeling.
yeah, the feeling,
Yeah.
and but like the excitement and gratitude for that
Yeah.
experience before it's even there, and it's funny that's what I was doing actually. This is the thing with like manifestation. It sounds like such a spiritual term, but the
Yeah.
same process can be playing out. You could call it like brain retraining, right? You could call
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
neuroplasticity work. That's what I
Yeah.
did with the DNRS course, which is all framed in like neuroscience terms. Was it was part of that? It was like come up right what you actually want to get to, and then really focus on exactly how good it would be to be doing that experience right now.
Yeah.
It's like I imagine myself going out and cycling on my bicycle out in nature. And I was just like, oh my God, like I would feel so good if I was doing that. But then really focusing on the feeling of it. And then that should happen like later in my life. I
Mhm.
wasn't thinking of it like when it happened, I wasn't thinking, oh, I manifested this in my past,
Yeah.
but it shifted my state, because I wasn't
Yeah.
like consciously like, oh, if you're just imagining like, oh, in 2, 3, 4 years time, I'm still gonna be stuck doing fuck all,
Yeah.
like
You're
just
manifesting that.
you're manifesting that as well. So I mean, yeah, people often don't like the manifesting thing, but at some
Yeah.
point you can't deny it as well.
Well,
Like you,
I wouldn't do this stuff when you're feeling like shit. I wouldn't be like, oh, let me just imagine something nice. I
mm,
would just allow that to be there. But
yeah,
if you take a moment to have an exercise, like, okay, what do I want to do if I'm
yeah,
gonna be fully better? What kind of direction do I want to go in my life? This has a big part for me as well lately, because
yeah,
it's like I came out of this thing and still, dealing with stuff, but it's more like, okay, the world is open, kind
yeah,
of. What am I gonna do? And
yeah.
that
Oh,
if you take a moment to reflect on that, and then you come up with things that you would like to do, and then
yeah,
you feel how your body reacts to it, and
yeah,
there's kind of coherence in that. That's what Joe Dispenza talks about a lot, I think,
yeah, yeah,
mind heart coherence. Um, yeah, I think you will kind of manifest those things.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And what's key there is like you said, like when to use this, and
Yeah.
uh I think what is helpful, like why it's nice to talk about this side of things as well, is to go back to that point of seriousness or even like heaviness and darkness. We can get stuck in that. Like I've seen that in myself as well,
Mm.
when it's just like the healing project becomes so uh serious, and it's like, okay, so just allow this, just meet this. And it's cool, like that aspect of it. But if you're feeling stuck in that, if there's feeling so heavy, then that's when it's always about kind of balance. It's always about the middle way. It sounds so cliche, but it
Yeah.
is right. So people, the reason like we don't often talk about the manifesting side of things is because that becomes a fixation in itself. Like that's
Yeah.
the more obvious fixation, is like,
Yeah.
okay, the negative stuff is bad, the shadow work is bad, this is what I need to be doing. But maybe you do need some of that excitement in your life. Like if you're just constantly meeting all this heaviness and like things are overwhelming and it's too much and I don't know what to do, um, then you're allowing that, you're meeting that. But then that's when it can be good to maybe just give some space to this more excitement side of things as well.
Yeah.
Like, okay, what would really excite me? Like what would be fun? What would I really enjoy to do with my life? And then focus a little bit more on that. You don't have to fix
Yeah.
this. You don't have to deny it. You don't have to get rid of it. But it is letting in a little bit more of that joy energy, a little bit more of
Yeah.
that kind of, okay, well, there's a reason to live, right? Because it can get very heavy. So it's like,
Mm.
that's for me what going out in nature is often as well. Like when things are so heavy, then I'll just go out and be on the mountain. And then it's like, oh, I'm feeling a lot better. And actually, wow, that mountain's like really cool. I'd like to climb to the top of it at some point, like that
Yeah.
would be really cool. So it's worth putting more energy into like making that possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can it's a good inquiry to see kind of what kind of beliefs you have about the future. Because
Yeah.
if it feels all heavy, it's probably because you're imagining that it's gonna be like this, or it's gonna get worse, or whatever.
Mm.
And then, but that's probably a bit more unconscious thoughts, like. But if you can just take a moment and see, like, how would this experience be right now if I know that this too shall pass? and
Yeah.
I don't actually know what the future is going to be like.
Mm,
It's pretty clear. It's pretty open. So then maybe I'll just experiment with imagining a future that I do like if there's possibilities, if I know this is gonna end.
yeah.
And then that can really help into kind of shifting that, because if it feels all heavy, you don't usually know what it is, why it feels so heavy. It's
Yeah.
like thoughts, a lot of unconscious thoughts, like, but usually you are kind of pulling this timeline into the future where it's like, oh, this is gonna be like this forever, and there are really deep layers under that, like I'm not
Mm,
gonna be loved and whatever, you know.
yeah.
Um, but you're not so much aware of that, and then but you can go deeper into that, but you can also just use this kind of positive thinking about the future to kind of maybe pull you out and see like, oh yeah, you
Yeah.
know, I'm just making assumptions, and maybe it's not
Yeah.
gonna be like that.
Yeah, exactly. It's like totally honor and allow what's here, but notice that assumption that thinks it knows how long it's
Yeah,
going to be here for. Because when you truly meet it, then it sticks around for longer when you're keeping it at arm's length,
yeah,
and
yeah,
thinking about it. Like that's what that whole thing is doing, is extrapolating it into a timeline, is a way to not let it completely crash down here now.
yeah,
That's the
yeah.
thing. It's like that's the whole time illusion thing as well. This is more on like the awakening side of things. But yeah, that's the only reason that we think about the future and how bad it's going to be and all of that. And that is, it's just a heaviness that's already here. And then the mind does whatever it can to keep a little bit of distance from it by using thoughts and a
Mm.
narrative and a story. Um, so yeah, one, I would say, is totally meet it, totally allow it, and just see when that story is playing out, just ask, okay, forget about all of that, but how is that making me feel now? Right. So to see that thought about the future, that's like, okay, I'm going to be stuck with this forever, whatever, like whatever it's saying, oh, this, that, blah, blah, blah. How's it making me feel now?
Mm.
And just by meeting this now, don't worry. Like, that's why I always like to keep it simple. Don't, the mind is complex, that the narratives are complex, the story is complex. You don't need to figure out your life. You just need to meet what's here now. And then to go back to the excitement stuff, you can also just start to view the unknown. Like the unknown can be terrifying, and
Mm.
that's fine. That's authentic, right? The unknown is
Mm.
terrifying to the mind, but it can also be exciting, right?
Yeah,
All the best experiences come out of the unknown.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah, that's so crazy.
all experiences come out of the unknown.
Yeah,
To be honest, like nothing is actually known that it's going to happen. Uh, but the most expansive, joyful things come out of that space that the mind is most terrified of as well.
yeah,
So that's the perspective thing as well, where it's like, okay, the unknown is bad and scary and dangerous, or the unknown is full of potential and
yeah,
possibilities.
yeah. Sometimes you can just have these short shifts where it's like, I'm gonna fucking die, it doesn't matter, and let's
Yeah.
just let's just meet it. Let's just meet everything that comes. I want to experience the heavy, the light, the bad, the good, however you want
Mm,
to label it. But sometimes just such a little shift can like put you into such a different state. It's like,
yeah.
I'll just let's enjoy this adventure,
Yeah,
being
exactly.
and yeah, but it can be really hard to sometimes if things are heavy to snap out of that.
Yeah. And that's when I would look at tools then. Like that was for me, like that heavy phase that was like a couple of weeks ago. Then just like just being simplifying things as well.
Mm,
Because basically then the mind is just completely overwhelmed, or the nervous system is
yeah,
overwhelmed. So it struggles to shift out of that perspective.
yeah.
So then it's like give it some support. Again, whether
Routine has
yeah.
been also good for me. Like,
Yes, exactly. Like and simplify things for me. That's what it was as well. It's like, okay, you don't need to solve everything right now. You don't need to like because this is the thing that people struggle with as well. If you look at like, all this like productivity guilt and stuff in the modern world, it's
mm,
like I always need to be doing something or getting somewhere or preparing for the future.